everyone, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sarah.
We're both going to sound a little bit different today. We're just going to say this straight up because both of us have got, chest issues.
I don't know if people think maybe we sound a little sexier.
Yeah.
We sound a little, you know how sometimes your voice sounds a little
Yeah, we're giving you a little bit of the Hope Solo low voice at the moment. And then
Hope Solo has a high voice. What are you talking about? But hopefully you can ignore that because we were looking forward to this weekend of football for a long time and it did not disappoint.
Do you know what? This was a great weekend for, and I'm going to be specific here, it was a great weekend for English football in all of the pyramid. You know, it wasn't just the WSL. We had some great games in the Championship. There was a controversial one, if you haven't checked that out, with Coventry versus Bristol. But overall, throughout the period, for English football, it was a weekend to come back to.
Our game of the week here is Leicester City versus Brighton, where Leicester City took it 3-0. And I kind of just have to kick this off, Allie, by saying I called this.
You did call this. I will give you all credit. You did call it.
So this was, as our editor Mike would call it, a mid to bottom of the table clash. We're going to call this a bottom of the table clash. Look, every game for Leicester City from here on out is a must-win game, right? It's do or die at this point, and especially games like this against teams where they can gain points on at the bottom of the table. This was a must-win game. But let's talk about Brighton first.
Yes.
Because you went into this game saying this is Brighton's, Leicester City, they're down and out, and also that Brighton was going to get this new manager bounce.
Yeah, I honestly thought they did, because you see it constantly. The changing management, players want to prove themselves because they want to keep their starting spots and things like that. So I genuinely thought that was going to happen. I think that I may have been a bit too optimistic because it would have been him coming in quite early. I was quite excited by the players they'd signed. So I think it's still going to happen, but it just is going to take a little bit longer than a couple of weeks.
I was disappointed in Brighton, I have to say. In the first 10 minutes of the game, it was back and forth. Nobody really controlled the game. And then Brighton really just was unable to connect. Even when they had possession, there was no flow. There was no rhythm to it. They just happened to be keeping the ball away from Leicester, but it still wasn't a put together string of passes. There was no rhyme or reason to really what was happening. You couldn't even see that in the identity of the team, and it was pretty disappointing to me, I have to say.
Wow. Harsh critiques all around.
I think a bright spot, though, was Sara Allie. Look, Brie did not start, but she came in at the number 6, which is not her preferred position anyways. And for the 5 minutes right after she came on, she made a mark. She was essentially winning the middle of the field back for Brighton in those 5 minutes.
Yeah, she came on earlier than she maybe should have done because of the injury.
Yeah.
But she was probably their only bright spot, to be honest.
I really think so, which is disappointing to say the least. But I think that she's grown a lot at Houston.
Yeah.
Coming back into the WSL, into a league that she knows what to expect. You could see, look, Sara Allie is a physical player, always has been. But you could see her really turn on the physicality and know that coming into the WSL, if she's playing that 6, she needs to go in. And she went in hard on tackles. She's going to be a big lift, a big positive for Brighton for the rest of the season.
Yeah. The problem I think Brighton have got is on paper they have got one of them, quite an impressive defensive line. You've got Georgia Fox. They've just signed Zoe Morse. So they've got and Megan Walsh is one of the best shot stoppers. But if she can't depend on her defenders, as I've said before, and I'll say it again, your goalkeeper should be your final resort, not your only resort. And they just, you look at the first goal for Leicester when we talk about Leicester, it was so much miscommunication between the defenders. What could Walsh do? What exactly could she do about that first goal? Nothing.
I'm going to go a step further and say it wasn't the first goal. It was all 3 goals from Leicester City was a pure breakdown in the defense. And even more sadly so, it was a breakdown in the center defense. Leicester City, when they got their flow underneath them, and let's talk about Leicester. Leicester City, when they got their flow underneath them, they were able to ping the ball around 1-2 touch up the middle of the field. They were able to break down Brighton's center defense up the middle of the field, and that is how they scored all 3 goals. And if you're Brighton, that screams massive trouble. Letting a goal in off a cross is one thing. Letting a goal in, from the outside, maybe even one from the middle, but you let all 3 goals in from your center defense being broken down, that is not a good sign moving forward. But we've got to give credit where credit is due. This wasn't just a breakdown in Brighton. This was Leicester City coming out really strong. I said in the last episode, they know that this is the start to the rest of their season, and they are going to be happy coming out against an opponent that they feel that they can beat. Opponent who's sitting just above them in the table, and they're going to want to start off strong, and that's exactly what they did. And maybe we're seeing the new manager bounce hit Leicester City right now, right? With Willie Kirk. I mean, I just mentioned that the 3 goals that Leicester City scored were right up the middle. It was beautiful to see how they're able to develop the flow and the rhythm over the course of the game. And I want to start out by saying CJ Bott. The first 10 or 15 minutes, CJ Bott was up and down and all over this field and was the only offense that Leicester City really had. And once they started to develop a little bit of a connection, they started relying more on their center backs and their defensive center midfielders to pull the strings. And that's when everything opened up. And the way that Willie Kirk has them playing, where they have that option wide, right? CJ Bott wide, opened up all that space for them to ping around in the middle. And that's how he has them playing. And it works so well for them. My fear is that it works well for them when they feel comfortable being on the attack. And then they'll come up against an opponent like United, like Arsenal, like Chelsea, where they don't feel comfortable being on the attack, and that'll all disappear.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But let's give them some credit first. Let's build them first. Whelan, who came from Brighton.
Oh, yeah.
Last season. So she had a point to prove.
Yeah. And she kicked off the scoring with that beautiful goal coming right from Brighton, scoring against her old team. She had a great game as well.
Yeah, and I want to point out the relationship with Whelan and Tierney. Sam Tierney, for me, is one of the brightest young talents we've got in the WSL at the moment. She came up with them when they were in the championship, and she's been with them since. And she is absolutely stunning. And so to see that pairing finally work with Whelan got the goal, Tierney got the assist in the first goal, and then Tierney got the goal, and Whelan got the assist for the second. Like, they're bonding really well, and I'm hoping that they're going to be able to feed off each other for the rest of the season.
Let's move from Leicester City versus Brighton over to, I think, the most anticipated game, although there were a lot of them, which is none other than Chelsea versus Arsenal, which ended in a 1-1 draw. What are your thoughts on this?
This game was so boring. This game was so dull. I was so bored. Like, it'd been built so up. And normally, the matchup between Chelsea and Arsenal, you normally can be guaranteed quite a good game. We've had scores where it's been 5-4. We've seen big high scoring goals. I don't know if they were both really wary because they knew that Man United had a game that they should and then ended up walking.
Yeah.
But they were all so cagey.
Yeah, it's interesting because going into this game, we talked about how both teams have lost a lot of their bench since the last time they saw each other for different reasons, right? Trades, injuries, etc. And especially we were seeing a brand new Arsenal. But Chelsea had 2 shots on target the entire game.
Yeah. And 1 winning.
The entire game. Sam Kerr had 1 shot on target the whole game and it went in. I mean, it was a great one. But I'm going to say, I don't think it wasn't boring. There was certainly some action. I really want to call out Caitlin Ford because the big question going into this game for Arsenal was, like, who's going to step up? Who's going to step up and fill these roles? And I think all eyes were on Kim Little, and she did because she's Kim Little, and that's what we expect. But I think what we didn't expect was how much Caitlin Ford really stepped up here. She's less comfortable on the outside naturally than she is in the middle, but she had Niamh Charles's number the entire game, and a lot of Arsenal's attack was generated through what she was able to do on that side, which leads me to how Arsenal scored. Her taking on Niamh Charles one-on-one and drawing a penalty kick.
The controversial penalty.
I personally thought the foul was outside the box, but as an Arsenal fan, I'm not complaining all that much about it. But this is... Before we move on, we have to talk about Chelsea's goal.
Sam Kerr doing Sam Kerr things.
Truly.
It was
truly.
beautiful.
If there was ever a Sam Kerr thing, it is the ability to be nowhere for 89 minutes. For 89 minutes and 59 seconds. And then score a beautiful goal. And it's, I mean, first of all, what a beautiful ball into Sam Kerr. And it was just as beautiful of a ball and goal as it was a slight misstep by Leah Williamson. Because everybody's human and it's okay.
Yeah, who's owned up to it. She's owned up to it.
Yeah.
She said it to the team and it's come out that she said that it was a slight error. You can't blame her for that. And
no. I mean, overall, though, how would you rate Arsenal's performance? Because we were saying, this is going to be a big indicator for how they will fare without Mead, without Miedema. How would you rate this?
I would say I would be more concerned as a Chelsea fan than I would as an Arsenal fan. I think Arsenal are showing that they do have the players, such as Kim Little, such as, like you said, Ford stepping up into a position that's not unnatural for her in a way that they can get points. And I think they're going to go into games against all other teams with that same sort of confidence and they'll get the points. If I was Chelsea, this is one of your best opportunities to take Arsenal and take 3 points off of Arsenal because they are a weakened Arsenal. And you didn't. And you had a lot of your key players on that pitch. So I would be more concerned based on gameplay as a Chelsea fan than I would as an Arsenal fan.
I would agree. The only thing that makes me not concerned about Chelsea is that I am fully convinced they don't care about the league right now. I am fully convinced all they care about is Champions League, and that's the only reason I'm not super concerned about Chelsea. Also, Emma Hayes.
So, speaking of the game, the match that was Arsenal-Chelsea, an interesting article came up, and boy, did Twitter have opinions on this, which is not this particular game, but the fixture of Chelsea versus Arsenal, the biggest game in the European women's calendar domestically.
I get why they're asking it. I'm not going to lie. I really do. As annoying of a question as that is, it really does seem, I'm not going to lie, like some English arrogance right there. I get why they're asking it because as far as battles for the top of the table goes, there's not that many that are as tight as Arsenal Chelsea generally turn out to be, right? We've got PSG and Lyon. They're always battling at the top. But it's not a battle in Spain. It's not really a big battle in Germany. It's not a battle in Sweden. It's, it is in terms of how points fall. But I don't think that for a neutral, this is the game that is most exciting in Europe for everybody to get. I mean, look at what happened. How many sold out at Camp Nou? And I know that was for a Champions League game, But still, you're not going to get 100,000 for a Chelsea Arsenal game right now. And that is the unfortunate reality of it. I just think, wow, maybe I just convinced myself that it might be.
I was going to say, because the points you said are what I would say, because let's talk about what Asante, who said in the articles. You look at Spain, there is no team close to Barcelona.
No,
look at
not.
France, Lyon beat PSG 9 times out of 10. Like, it's quite rare, the fact that, we'll get onto it, PSG is currently top of the table. If we are saying that the English, and this is specifically English, league is the most competitive at the moment, and Chelsea have some of the most competitive players, most bright talent out there, then yes, Arsenal versus Chelsea should be a landmark game fixture on any women football fans' calendar.
I do think right now PSG Lyon is still above it. I think that's still the game that people get more excited about because of the competition level in the WSL. I said last week that this game isn't going to decide who wins the WSL and who doesn't, because we know both of these teams can get beat by another team. Versus in France, we've got PSG and Lyon, and that's what we've got. And that game is going to tell us who wins that league more often than not. So I think for that reason, it's still France's. All right, moving on. Let's go around the world, around the world.
Up north to Scotland. There was some big matches this weekend in the Scottish title. Glasgow City beat Dundee United 8-1. Celtic also beat Glasgow Women 8-0. However, third place Rangers could only earn a draw with Hearts, which has put a bigger gap between them and the title than we were seeing previously.
Over to France. PSG are currently leading the charge in the French league. A win over Rodez keeps them 1 point ahead of rival Lyon. The gap between these two teams and the rest of the league is so large that third place is the best the others can hope for. Third place is currently held by Montpellier, but there are no less than 5 teams in contention for that last Champions League spot.
Down under to Australia. Despite a loss this weekend, Western United are still topping the table. A draw in the Melbourne derby has allowed the league to be blown wide open. As we've covered before, the Australian league is decided by a playoff rather than an outright winner, so there is still so much to play for even in this early stage.
And finally, over to Mexico. La Liga MX is back with a bang. Tigres are currently leading the way, having won both of their games already. Their lead has been bolstered with a convincing win over Pachuca. However, if past seasons are anything to go by, this league will be anything but predictable.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football games, including women's football. Want to know why Miedemar scores so many goals? Do you want to explore how City have turned it around this season? Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and sign up to learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for €10. That's €40 off the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
So, we talked about it last week. Now we have got the fruits of the NWSL Draft. So we're going to give you a quick rundown of who were the winners and who were the losers in this spectacle.
Let's talk winners first. I think I've got 2 that stand out. The first, I think, will stand out to everybody, and that's Kansas City. Wow on all accounts. Wow to the moves that they made before the draft, and incredible moves within the draft. There were 4 rounds, and Kansas City was able to take 8 players. So they were able to reinforce every single line. They filled the gaps where they needed to. They took Michelle Cooper, the sophomore out of Duke, who we highlighted last week, to replace Lynn Williams, who they lost. And they were able to really deepen their bench, which is, I think, partially why they lost the championship. Who's your big winner?
My big winner was Gotham, and it wasn't necessarily in the draft, but it was all of that, like things we talked about last week of trading picks and allocation money and stuff like that made them the winner, because, as you mentioned, they got Lynn Williams from Kansas, which is a huge signing for Gotham. Absolutely massive. And they picked up a couple of really good rookies and stuff like that from the draft. But for a team that obviously came bottom last season, they have managed to pick up some strength that they were missing. I am going to have to point out that they did re-sign McCall Zaboni, which is controversial to say the least. We had a comment which was basically, she's learnt her lesson, she's still growing, we're still growing, and you should forgive us for that. And I'm like, weak, man. That's weak.
I do give credit. Look, yeah, nobody's defending that comment that McCall Zarboni made. I think the comment you're referring to by the GM Yael was her basically saying, that the moment Gotham announced that they were re-signing McCall Zarboni, Yael put out a tweet basically saying, McCall has made the effort to learn her lesson and she's still growing, and we appreciate that. I don't know. I have to say, I'm on a purely soccer perspective, I didn't actually think it was a good move, to be honest. I think they have leadership. I think they have midfielders. And I don't think that McCall-Zerboni is the heart of that midfield anymore. I think she was 2 years ago. I don't think she is anymore. So frankly, from a purely soccer perspective, I don't agree with it. But I love all of the moves that Gotham has been making, with the exception of that. Yael spoke at length at the end of last season about how seriously she takes the offseason, and that she fully admits and kind of puts her hands up and says, I didn't know. I thought that by bringing in the players we brought in, with Christy Mewis and Ashton Harris and Ali Krieger last year, that we were good, that we'd take a good team and make it great. And that's not what happened. And I give her full credit for kind of saying, I was wrong and I'm going to fix this. And I think she's done a great job so far, and it really seems that she stuck to her word. And I think that the moves that she's made were the right moves for the puzzle pieces. So I love this pick as like a big winner. I completely agree. All right, I've got one other winner, and it's kind of like a smaller winner, if you will. But I have to call out San Diego, because Casey Stoney, these are such Casey Stoney picks, what San Diego was able to do. San Diego, I think, is one of the teams that everybody's going to look at Kansas City and say they're going to win this league. And I agree. I think they're going to. But San Diego is, again, going to outperform what everybody thinks that they can do, because partly of how Casey Stoney has picked in this draft. She knows how to build a roster. They needed depth in all positions, and they got it. Now, I don't agree with teams drafting just to fill holes that they're going to have when the World Cup starts. But with these bench spots that they've filled, now San Diego really does have that. Do you have any other winners, Allie, before we move on to the losers of the draft?
The final winner wasn't the team as such, but it's Laura Harvey. And I'm giving props to Laura Harvey because in the last dying seconds, she did a trade for Emily Sonnet over from the Spirit. And Emily Sonnet should not play for Mark Parsons because he does not appreciate her. He does not like her. He didn't like her at the Thorns, and he won't have played her well at the Spirit. So thank you, Laura Harvey, for saving Sonnet from having to go through that again.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that trade screams of Sonnet didn't want to be there. I think everybody kind of was like, wait, question mark, Sonnet, OL didn't really need help in their back line. But I totally agree. I think she would. Look, the Spirit's falling apart anyways. They've lost quite a few players, and I think part of the reason why Sonnet went there, to play with Kelly O'Hara, isn't there anymore either. So I think that's a great call out. I gotta throw in one more. I'm sorry, but I just quickly have to give props to, an honorable mention of North Carolina, because I think that they rebounded really well from losing to Bina, and I think they made strong picks that will fill that hole. And I think that that's what the draft is for.
So over now to the losers of the draft. There's a couple of teams that either didn't get quite the players they wanted, or they picked some random players that didn't quite make sense. So who's your first loser?
Look, for me, it's just so hard to watch because it's Louisville, and it's just a team that doesn't know their identity, or they do, and I'm just not seeing what's being put together over there, but it didn't feel like intentional pieces of a puzzle. It was strong players, great selections, but it didn't feel like they knew the direction they were going in, knew what identity they were trying to build. There was nothing behind it that you could kind of see form. You can have as many great players as you want, but you need an identity. We saw that with Orlando. They had Marta, they had Alex Morgan, they had a plethora of players, and they couldn't win. You need an identity, and Louisville was not drafting to create that in an offseason where they really needed to after losing quite a few players as well.
I think my biggest pick for loser was Washington Spirit. Washington Spirit got
a good one.
Decimated in this draft with various trades that happened via up, and they didn't really pick anybody up. They didn't really.
Washington Spirit's such a curious one, don't you think?
Oh, it's weird. I don't get it.
I mean, they win this the Challenge Cup? I think they won it, or they were in the finals. I can't remember right now off the top of my head because I was just sick. Excuse me, everybody. And then and then they just bombed the league. Lots of big players leave, and they've basically just had a nosedive from what looked like the start of a dynasty, and now they're at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. And they traded a lot of their picks. They picked up a couple of players, but at the same time, it was just same as you said with Louisville. What are they trying to do? Like, what identity? They've got a lot of players. They've got some players that are great, but it's like, what are they going to do with the players that they've got? And I don't think Parsons knows what he wants to do with the players he's got.
Yeah, I love that you bring up Mark Parsons, because does it ring alarm bells for you that Mark Parsons enters and O'Hara leaves, Sonnet leaves, the team starts to fall apart?
If I was a Spirit fan, I'd be concerned, because we saw what happened with Parsons when he coached the Netherlands team, and now we're getting the same sort of behaviour. I mean, and these players can leave. Unlike with the national team, these players can go elsewhere, and they have done. And like I said a bit in the winners with Laura Harvey, like, Emily Sonnet should not play under Parsons, and there's a few players that should not. And so if I was a Spirit fan, I'd be very, very concerned right now.
I know we're not here to talk about Parsons, but I was disappointed in this hire for many reasons. Obviously he has a good track record in the NWSL, but he has it with a team that has their own dynasty, that had players coming in for reasons other than Mark Parsons.
You can't base success on Portland.
Exactly.
You can't.
Especially, I couldn't agree more. And especially in an era where we're talking about, why are the same coaches bouncing around when we need to move forward? And you bring in a coach that's already been there in an era that few people want to look back on right now. Why is the big question. I think that's a great call. I mean, I'm going to add one more, and I think this is going to be surprising. I don't think that they're necessarily a loser of this draft, but I do have a question mark around Angel City, and I will explain why. They made huge moves to get that number 1 pick and get Alyssa Thompson. Massive pick. She's going to be huge for them. That's not what this is about. They were only able to select 2 players in this entire draft in a team that was riddled with injuries and had no bench to support those injury-ridden players. It seems to be how their organization likes to do it. They kind of structured the team in this way where, it flows through Savannah McCaskill and it goes to Kristen Press. And that's how we're going to play soccer. So they do seem to have this, one way of we want to do it and this is how we're going to do it, instead of building the puzzle pieces more like Casey Stoney likes to do. And I'm not saying there's a right and a wrong, but it does concern me that they were only able to get 2 players in this entire draft. They gave a lot up, and those are great players. But in my mind, this is where you can develop talent. You can draft a lot of players and you can develop a lot of talent. And they got great talent, but they need more depth.
They Spursed it. They put all of their eggs in one basket for Alyssa Thomas. Like they've Spursed it. They've just put it all in one basket. So I would be concerned with maybe we'll see some more moves, because obviously we've got a few players that are like free agents and they can still come and go from that way. But for what was looking like a great draft for LA, they put so much into getting that first pick, and a great first pick it was. But as we've said before, and we've said it again, one player a team does not make,
especially when you are fielding 11 players, and that's part of the beauty of soccer.
Yeah.
All right, and that is it for us this week here at the Women's Soccer Show. I've been Sarah,
and I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.